Hi, Jonathan.
All right, everybody. The joys of Zoom and not quite knowing when you're going to start, but it's all good as far as that is. I'm so honored to be here. This is Jonathan Kersting. I'm with the Pittsburgh Technology Council, and I was really honored when Covestro asked me to host this session. And when they asked me to pick somebody, I thought, like, who would be someone that would just really represent someone that's just really doing it right in Pittsburgh, that has a great story to tell. And Jen was literally the first person I thought of. And I reached out to her, and she immediately said yes. So I got super pumped up. And so I think we're going to have a great conversation today. And I think what you're going to learn from Jen, I think is just very inspiring. And the one thing that I have learned over my 23 years at the Pittsburgh Tech Council, I've literally interviewed thousands of people across Pittsburgh's tech ecosystem over the past 2 decades. And the biggest problem has been there's not enough women, there's not enough people of color when it comes to technology in general, not just in Pittsburgh, but around the world. And I mean, I don't need stats to give you, I don't have to give you stats and everything like that. I know the numbers because I see it every single day. We all know there's not enough representation going on. And the Pittsburgh Tech Council is really putting it into overdrive to really try to ramp things up, everything from the STEM level all the way down to people that are in the trenches like Jen every day, building companies. So without any further ado, Jen Yosef, thank you for joining me today. I am so excited about our conversation because you have a very unique story. And I think we got to start with really, like, you're an engineer by trade and you made the flip to becoming an entrepreneur. That's a great story behind that. Let me know what's going on about that.
Absolutely. Well, Jonathan, first, always so great to see you. Thank you for thinking of me to be part of this, and I'm certainly very excited for our conversation today. You know, it's certainly it's been a very interesting journey from moving from being an engineer to an entrepreneur, and I think when I look back at that journey, right, and when I was an engineer, we were always trained to be very much programmatic in a sense. Like, you're a problem solver, you are technically very proficient at what you're doing, working at these large corporations, everything is very secure, but you're in a little box too, right? Like, you can be creative, but you got to stay in that box. You got to understand those limitations. And I always wanted to break those parameters. And that really is what led me into the journey of entrepreneurship and then running this tech company. And there's been some similarities, but then there's been stark differences. And there's certainly been some hard challenges that I've had to overcome. I think, just in general, where leaving that very secure comfort, you're contributing well to society. Why take this risk? Why jump into something like this? And I mean, some of the similarities, obviously, that come into play is I've always been required to solve complex problems, right? And when difficult situations have arisen, we need to go forward and do that. And I was able to translate that into my journey as an entrepreneur. But then there's very little structure. With a startup,
engineers need structure. They build structures.
Yes. And my personal background, right, having studied a lot in the structural engineering aspect, yes, it has to be a very structured path. But then when you come into this world, it's completely different. Every single day, it's going to be something new.
Yeah, so you bring these two really cool skill sets of, like, you got this discipline of an engineer, and then you got the heart of an entrepreneur because you want to bust out and do stuff. So how did you find Mighty? You became the CEO of Mighty. I know you weren't the founder of Mighty, but you basically are scaling this company as if it is your own startup. Tell us how you kind of came into Mighty, and tell us about what Mighty does, because your solution, I think, is a really cool solution. As someone that's bought a couple houses, you address some really cool problems.
Yes. So I learned about Mighty through a friend, advisor, mentor, one of my favorite people, Jacob Hanshaw, who's actually on my board right now. And he's the one that told me that he's like, I think you really need to look at this company. And that's how I got involved in Mighty in the early days. And then from there, basically became the CEO and have really taken Mighty as my own, and super excited about the potential of what this company has and how it's been growing. But our solution is very simple, right? We've identify that inspections is a big stressful issue and something that's very important that comes in every single real estate transaction. And you get this report that tells you the health of your house, all these issues, but then you don't really have somebody that is dissecting that information and telling you what things cost, because that's really what the home buyer and seller really need to understand and know. And that's where we come in the picture.
It's a great solution. And it's been so much fun watching you as you stepped in there and really building this company forward. So tell me, give us the good, the bad, and the ugly. I never want to be Pollyanna about Pittsburgh because it has as many challenges as it does opportunities. What have been the upsides and the downsides of building and scaling Mighty, especially in the Pittsburgh area?
Yeah, so I think some of the challenges that exist in the Pittsburgh region in general, I'd say, is the fact that there is a lot of cloning that is happening. That people kind of don't really see. They want to be able to identify with people that look like them, right? And we've seen that in a lot of other places too. Definitely. But I think here there is a trend where you're following companies that have some sort of a trend going on. So there's this double trend issue that I've noticed is where you see a lot of the individuals following or investing in companies that just feel very much similar to what they would imagine would be successful, right? Versus looking at companies in a much more holistic manner. And we are, being in a space that we are already in, it's unique, right? The real estate market is different. But I think one of the aspects that we've certainly noticed, that I've certainly very much noticed, is the fact that these challenges of the fact that these individuals are really identifying and seeing companies that they think that are going to be able to solve the problems are the ones that they should really change that mindset on and be able to identify and really look at companies in a much more holistic manner is one of the challenges I think that currently exists. I mean, on the upsides of Pittsburgh, right? As we tap into more like Pittsburgh's innovation scene, I think one of the things is Pittsburgh Tech Council is doing a great job, right? That you guys are very much engaged with startups. You're very much engaged with making sure that these companies have the resources that they need. So those are definitely two of the things that I think are very, very positive about the fact that Pittsburgh's ecosystem is growing.
I love that answer because we're trying our best. That is for sure. And I mean, it's got to be doubly hard building it's hard enough building a company as it is. I don't care who you are, but I feel like if you're a woman, if you're a minority, obviously it's going to be all the more difficult. And those are some of the things that Tech Council we're trying to help eradicate. And what's your experience been like that? Have you felt like people not taking you as seriously because you're a woman? What's it been like?
Yes. I mean, that's the unfortunate part, right? Is I think that for myself personally, I've definitely had much more pushback. I've definitely been challenged on things that I have a very in-depth understanding on. Like, I understand this market inside out, right? I've been embedded in this space. I know that, but I think it really becomes a problem when it's unnecessary challenges. I'm always up for constructive feedback, but when you are doing a pushback just for the reason because I don't necessarily fit in a mold of somebody that should be running a real estate construction tech kind of space, right, and that's when it becomes an issue.
Dang you for not fitting into a mold. How dare you? That's not fun. Come on. I'm just kidding. So let's talk more broadly about Pittsburgh's innovation landscape and where it needs to go. I mean, as you're in this running day in and day out, you're seeing firsthand what we need. What are the top priorities in order to ensure our vitality?
I would say, I think one of the biggest things is retention of talent. So we already know, and I think this is something that a lot of individuals and a lot of discussions have happened around the fact that we are very good at attracting talent. But then the question that arises is what kind of talent, right? Are we making Pittsburgh, and are we saying that Pittsburgh is a place that is welcoming and retaining talent of all sorts of different backgrounds. Because I think the challenge kind of comes into play, and this goes back to what I was sharing, where people are, there's a lot of that cloning that the word that I use is because are we saying that when we are looking at diverse students, when we're looking at diverse talent, diverse individuals that are coming in, are we making Pittsburgh a place that is going to continuously retain them? We obviously have a ton of positive in terms of the fact that companies like Facebook, Uber have some strong offices here. We've got continuously more companies that are getting built here, but really, in summary, are we doing a good enough job making sure that talent stays here?
What are your thoughts on how we can be more welcoming? Because my thing is, we need people from around the world coming to Pittsburgh. I mean, talent is everywhere, and we need the best and the brightest. And I get concerned sometimes. I feel like I feel like parts of Pittsburgh can be very insular sometimes, and people, you say, it can be the whole clone thing almost as if you're talking about it. How can we make sure that when someone arrives here, that they feel welcome, they feel plugged in, they feel like they're part of something, and they feel like they have maneuverability and can live a life in Pittsburgh?
It's, I wish there was like a simple answer for that, right? It's going to take a lot of different organizations. It's going to take a lot of different individuals. But I think one thing that I can say is each one of us needs to be contributing to that. Each one of us needs to make an effort to go out there and reach out to those students or reach out to those individuals. Or, a ton of times it is really students, right? That kind of are coming in and they are, and that's kind of like the talent that we need to retain as well. So in general, there is, community efforts are big play in terms of making sure that we are welcoming these individuals. I think companies, right? Companies need to do more in terms of making sure that, like, are we creating inclusive and safe spaces for these individuals? So that's another primary driver that's going to make sure that these individuals actually stay in Pittsburgh.
Absolutely. I knew this was going to be a tough interview just because we had such little time. I know there's so much for us to talk about. We only have a few minutes left. I want to get to something that is really important to me, important to the Tech Council, and I hope it's important to everybody out there, is inspiring the next generation of women to get into tech. It just blows my mind when I see how few women are in tech, and I feel like we're leaving some really smart minds behind. And I know you got to get in front of girls very, very young to really show them this is something you can do. What are your thoughts on that, Jen?
So that is something I'm certainly very passionate about. And I think that one thing that I make it a priority in my life is to give back on that. So whether it's mentoring college students or it's mentoring middle school, high school students, I am involved in both of those. So one of them, one of my mentees is a student at CCAC. From church, I have a group of young individual girls that I have an opportunity to mentor. So that is how I've been able to really stay involved and engaged in that.
Good stuff. And I think it's so important that everyone just gets a little, in some way, it just kind of builds that foundation. And at the Tech Council, we're starting a thing called Launch. We're taking a cohort of, I believe, 15 girls and running these programs to empower and show them the opportunities that are out there. And we're just putting this into overdrive. And I just think it's so important because I always say we need 1,000 more Jen Yosefs here in Pittsburgh doing what you're doing. So we've got about a minute left. Any kind of parting thoughts, once again, just about Pittsburgh in general, just getting everybody together, trying to get everybody included and brought along for the ride that tech is providing us right now?
Yes, in general, I think we've got such potential, right? And we're moving, we're making headway, we're making progress. I think discussions like this are very important. Thank you to Think 30 for hosting things like this. So all those things are going to make sure that these conversations are happening and we are actually, there's actionable ways that we are actually doing something about it. In closing, I would just say, each one of us needs to play our part. Each one of us needs to contribute, and that's the only way we can continue making Pittsburgh a great city that it already is.
I couldn't agree more. And that's why I feel like everyone's got to play a little bit of a role. We're trying to do the tech council. I'm trying to do what I do by trying to tell stories. You're doing what you're doing. I mean, if we could all get together and have more things like Think 30, which I think is just foundational to having us all kind of move everything forward, I think is just so important. I was so honored to be part of this today. The time went by so fast, Jen. I could ask you so many more questions about what you're doing, but I think you really turned over some really good stones for us. Thanks for taking the time and spending it with us here today, Jen. You're the best.
Thank you so much for having me, Jonathan.